We have so much to talk about today, including Steam Machine benchmarks leaking and so much more. As usual, the sources will be in the video description, and I will timestamp topics so you can find the part that's most interesting to you. I definitely want to talk about these Steam Machine benchmarks, though. So there's a lot of signs that these are probably out for review. Now, this isn't me like winking like they're probably out for review as I'm over here with my Steam Machine benchmarking. I don't have one, just to be clear, but there's been tons of rumors that these are out. Valve themselves has said a summer launch in an update to their Steam verification program. I reported on that in a recent news video. But now we're actually seeing Geekbench scores leaking for the CPU. So the CPU test is showing a score of 2,334. The WCCF Tech article I'm looking at here compares that against like a PlayStation 5 CPU, which would score a 1,218 in the same test. Those are single core scores. Single core is more indicative of gaming performance than the multi-core score would be, but at the same time, Geekbench isn't really like a gaming benchmark specifically. It's a synthetic benchmark, so just take it for what it is, but it at least gives us some general figure for what kind of a CPU this is going to be, what kind of performance we could get out of it. Now, a PlayStation 5 could end up having a lot more game optimization, which can help it punch above its weight compared to, PC games. But it is a significant single-core performance advantage in favor of this leaked Steam Machine score. It reports itself as an AMD custom CPU 1772 with 6 cores, 12 threads, and a 4.86 gigahertz base frequency. Now, this score of 2,334 puts it very close to a Ryzen 5 7540U, which scores a 2,281 single-core score, which puts it noticeably slower than something like Ryzen 5 7500F, which would be, in many regions, a good budget choice for a desktop build if you're still trying to go with the AM5 platform, that kind of thing. Anyway, it'll be interesting to see how this competes in more of a living room console space, because I actually definitely still find the the home theater setup in like a easy living room environment pretty appealing, which also makes it kind of frustrating to track my stats between the different platforms. So check this out. If you're like me, you love tracking and visualizing all your gaming stats, but you don't just game on PC. And even on PC, there are multiple launchers and stores with their own tracking systems. It'd be great to have it all in one place. That's where PlayTracker comes in. And a huge thank you to PlayTracker for sponsoring this part of today's video. PlayTracker is an app that connects to various gaming platforms, including Steam, Xbox, PlayStation, Nintendo, Epic Games, GOG, Retro Achievements, EA Origin, Ubisoft, Riot, and Battle.net, and combines all of your data in one place. It offers fun challenges and progression systems, advanced game library labeling and sorting, a unified cross-platform social experience, and even stats and graphs about games and the types of players that play them. You can even get a Spotify Wrapped-style recap of your year in gaming with PlayTracker Replay. I love that PlayTracker enables you to chase the best deals on games without worrying so much about fragmenting your stats, and there's even giveaways you can qualify for by completing challenges, all while clearing out that embarrassingly large backlog you built up. Check out PlayTracker by following the sponsored link in the video description and/or pinned comment. Now, whether this is prepping for the Steam Machine's imminent launch or just a general update that's coming anyway, SteamOS 3.8.9 beta has released with some HDMI audio and allow tearing fixes, so just another sign that things could be getting ready for that Steam Machine launch. And just in general, SteamOS has gotten to be a really great experience. Now, I still mostly just use it on my Steam Deck, but I really actually prefer it to like the Windows-based handhelds and things like that. But that being said, Microsoft has been trying to make the gaming experience on PC better, and they are trying to do some things to bring people into their Xbox PC app. One of the latest things they're doing that actually is kind of interesting is advanced shader delivery, which has now expanded its public preview to support all AMD RDNA generations. Now, advanced shader delivery, if you're unaware, is basically, you know how a lot of times when you start a game, you'll have to wait for shaders to compile the first time you play it, and then some games still manage to have some shader compilation stutter afterwards, but you have that initial long wait time. If you're gaming on a handheld device, that can take a long time and drain a bunch of your battery, all sorts of things. So the idea here is that those could be compiled in the cloud and then downloaded directly to your system, but then your GPU and driver versions, et cetera, would need to be supported as part of that program. And that's what we're seeing here. So it's kind of an interesting thing, but I think the fact that this is just on the Xbox app still probably isn't going to be enough to get me to use the Xbox app. But there's all sorts of signs that the next Xbox is going to be a lot more PC-like in many capacities. With Project Helix, we have to still see exactly how that plays out. But Microsoft is clearly doing some stuff to try to get that ready to go. Now, the price of all of these upcoming consoles in the Steam Machine and all of that is likely going to be prohibitively expensive for a lot of people. We're seeing signs of, for example, the MSI Claw 8EX Plus, which has the Arc G3 Extreme from Intel, which I'm very interested in because there's a lot of signs that this is going to be a very, very cool, performance-wise piece of tech for a handheld PC. But $1,800, I mean, it's just too much. Now it looks like Newegg has it for $1,700, so what a deal. I was actually genuinely interested in getting one of these as like a upgrade to my Steam Deck, but at that price point, I'm just gonna wait for prices to come down or something else to come out. I don't know, I'm just not in a rush. I mostly play indie stuff that runs fine on the Steam Deck anyway when I'm playing on mobile, so there's that. Now, again, looking at the prices of stuff these days, AMD's going to apparently take on Nvidia's DGX Spark $4,679 DGX Spark AI PC with its, what a deal, $3,999. Don't worry, it's not over $4,000. Ryzen AI Halo with 128 gigabytes of memory. And we know that the memory, important for large language models, etc., AI, all of that. But man, I just hate to see prices where they're at and what it's doing to the gaming industry, including consoles. So we've had, apparently Xbox is losing hundreds of dollars per console sold, as Microsoft weighs whether Xbox should just be spun off as more of its own separate kind of company, maybe still, like the exact details are not quite sure what that might look like. But overall, it certainly looks like there's some serious changes happening at Xbox. And we have stuff like Microsoft opens new tab, is considering options for its Xbox gaming unit, including a potential spin-off or restructuring as a wholly owned subsidiary. The information reported on Friday, citing 3 people with direct knowledge of the discussions. All sorts of crazy stuff happening. Unfortunately, we're seeing that because of all of, that, plus the, Xbox just didn't sell as many units this generation. Unfortunately, they're looking at closing down a bunch of studios. Ninja Theory is apparently one of the ones on the chopping block with Xbox closing them down. They're the Hellblade developers who had just given a showcase for the Xbox showcase of their upcoming, I guess it's not Hellblade 3, they were just calling it Senua, I think. But it looks a lot more action-oriented, still seem to have incredible graphics, which is what they were known for with their Hellblade 1 and 2. But yeah, I really hate to see other studios potentially getting shut down, but I've also seen reports that there's some hopes that these studios could get bought out and then still continue development and keep teams together and all of that. So I'm just really hoping that that works out for the teams that are affected. It looks like Compulsion Games and Double Fine are also in active negotiations about spinning off. So at this point, I haven't been able to find concrete details on exactly how all of this is going to play out. A lot of this seems to be kind of insider information at this point, rather than everything being completely confirmed how it's going. But we're also seeing Xbox Game Studios head and chief of staff both depart as Asha Sharma's Xbox division sweeping overhaul continues unabated. So again, all sorts of stuff getting changed at Xbox. It'll be really interesting to see how all of this plays out, what it means for the games that they develop, what it means for the upcoming consoles, what it means for their business models, because the new CEO has also been talking about needing to look into completely different paradigms for how to sell consoles, especially with prices being crazy. So now we're seeing, now this isn't really official, but we're seeing some signs that Xbox could at least have as an option a buy now, play later payment program working with PayPal and Klarna. Now, where is this coming from? I saw this at WCCF Tech. Again, all my sources will be in the video description. However, it looks like this is coming from data mining the Xbox website, where you can see references to buy now, pay later, and PayPal and Klarna flexible payments. So I know right now there's a lot of people's fear about just renting hardware rather than owning it. So I hope that this would at least be buy it and you actually own it, even if you had to buy on credit rather than just like renting indefinitely kind of situation. So, man, we're definitely in some dark times when it comes to PC hardware and console hardware. Just anything with memory or SSDs. It's really kind of crazy. Now, on the topic of all this Xbox stuff, Gears of War E-Day was announced as being an Xbox exclusive, although that still is coming to PC. It just means not going to go to other consoles. Coming out October 6th. However, we now have PC system requirements. So I decided not to do a full video on this because there's not even a hint of what resolution or frame rate or anything any of this would be targeting. Let me slide this screen over so you can actually see it. But the minimum GPU is an RTX 5050, RTX 2060, RX 6600, RX 9060, or Intel A580. That's a pretty wide range of performance on the table there, but they're also not specifying what sort of resolution or settings or anything that you would be getting out of it. So, I mean, it's not really a benchmark anyway. The CPU is listed as a Ryzen 5 2600X or Intel i7 6850K or i5 10400. So again, pretty big difference between some of these as well. The recommended GPUs are 5060, RTX 3060 Ti, RX 6700 XT, RX 9060 XT, and Intel B580. And if you're like 9060 XT, but didn't they already list the 9060 as the minimum? If you weren't in on the information, there is a 9060 non-XT version, but it's not sold on the DIY market to individual buyers. It's used in pre-built gaming systems with system integrators. But again, there's not a huge difference between a 9060 and a 9060 XT. So this does seem a little bit strange. Like if we pull up the RTX 2060, which is one of the minimum listed GPUs, sure, it's close to like an A580 or a RX 6600, which are also listed as minimum GPUs, but they also listed the RTX 5050, which would be 43% faster. That's a pretty noticeable performance difference. And then you start going up, okay, 5050 and a B580, those are almost the same performance, and yet one is listed as a minimum requirement and one is listed as a recommended. So anyway, they're not targeting any particular resolution or frame rate anyways. I'm not going to read too much into it, but yeah, I'm thinking a game of this, AAA kind of status will probably get one of the bigger system requirement charts with more detail in the future closer to launch. So maybe I'll do a separate video on that at some point if we get those additional details. Now, speaking of upcoming games, there is now some signs, still definitely in the leaks and rumors stage, that different than Witcher 4 or the Witcher 3 DLC that have been announced, it's looking like there will be a Witcher multiplayer game coming to PC and mobile. At this point, no discussion of console, but I'd be kind of shocked if something came to PC and not console. That'd be a little unusual. And the gameplay details sound like you get to custom make your own Witcher. This is set, I think when Geralt is still young. And it sounds like the idea, we don't have a ton of information, but it sounds like if you're doing this kind of multiplayer thing, you'd probably be able to, go on missions in different regions to hunt different monsters, and you develop your own Witcher, and the different Witcher schools could be like different kind of ability focuses, and could be like a class system and all kinds of stuff. I'm certainly less interested in multiplayer Witcher because for me, the big draw with the Witcher games has usually been actually the story and the characters. The gameplay itself has always been maybe less special to me. It's more held together by the narrative, but that's just my take. Anyway. Now, there's been a lot of talk about the upcoming FSR 4.1 and like controversies over whether it would support RDNA 3.5 APUs, but we have some more information at least about its support for RDNA 3 and RDNA 2. This source will be linked in the description. This is from Tech Power Up, and it looks like discussions at Computex got some additional information. One thing that's good to hear is they are confirming that even though the RDNA 3 GPUs do need to run a different model because they don't support FP8 acceleration, they do have a type of AI acceleration, although they'll have to use the int8 data type. And they're promising that it should get equivalent output. So they should ensure there is no quality loss in the final visual output. So AMD is confirming that they should be able to, give you a equivalent, at least visual output to what you get on RDNA 4, although it's still unclear if we'll get the same kind of performance boost out of it, right? Because it might be less efficient. Certainly in the leaked version, it was not as fast as using FSR 4 FP8 version on RDNA 4 GPUs. Now, they also talk a little bit more about trying to support RDNA 2, talking about like, why is that having to wait until 2027 when we're getting the FSR 4.1 RDNA 3 support coming in July, at least it's promised. Hopefully it doesn't get delayed or anything. But they're talking about the how much additional work has to happen for supporting RDNA 2 because they don't have any specific AI accelerators built into that architecture. So they'll have to rely on these stream processors, and that means that the raw GPU compute will be responsible for the upscaling model, which means that there's going to be kind of competition between running the upscale and just running the game and running its normal shaders and all of that. So the performance hit can be a lot more significant. So they're saying that this requires a great deal of optimization to make the process work efficiently. And AMD claims that making FSR 4.1 upscaling consume fewer shader cycles is very challenging. So AMD is taking more time to optimize this, but plans to launch support sometime in 2027. So anyway, that's at least some additional talks on how why that one split out so much later. So it sounds like they're really trying to get it working. And I will say, in the leaked version that we've had forever, at this point, it seems like the RDNA 2 GPU support certainly was not as good as it was on RDNA 3, and that was leaked a long time ago. So hopefully AMD really has been putting a lot of work into improving this behind the scenes, and that what we end up getting is better than what we had leaked out initially. Because, man, it's going to be so embarrassing for AMD if the official support of this is basically equivalent to the leaked version we had ages ago. So I'm really hoping they did actually get this running faster and better image quality and things like that than what we saw in the leaked version, and that was just a sign of what was available at that time that has been continued to be iterated on. Certainly that, I think, will be received a lot better than otherwise. Now, in NVIDIA news, RTX Remix 1.5 is now out. One of the standout features is RTX IO compression, able to get Half-Life 2 RTX down from 80 gigabytes to 50 gigabytes, so that's certainly interesting. But there's also some things like smooth normals. So in a lot of older games, which is what, if you're out of the loop, RTX Remix can let you inject a lot of newer NVIDIA technologies, path tracing, upscaling, DLSS, all sorts of things, into older games as long as they're, compatible with it. I'm not going to rehash all of that. I've talked about that in other videos. But one thing about that kind of generation of game is you oftentimes get this geometry that kind of has these chunked off lines that then you put some real path traced lighting on it, and it maybe looks a little odd. It's not really what the world should look like, what that structure should look like. So the smooth normals are automatically smoothing that out to look a lot better when lit with path tracing. So that's certainly an interesting update that I think a lot of people would like if they're playing around with this stuff. Overall, this update, in addition to the smooth normals and the RTX IO, also added viewport light controls and RTX Remix Skills, which is text-based instruction files providing specific functional context to AI coding agents. Anyway, so it's just more guides, making it easier to actually use the all of the features and all that with the coding. And you know, I had mentioned that I do play on console sometimes. Also on PC, I often do like to use a DualSense controller. If you're playing especially PlayStation games on PC, I mean, we'll be getting fewer, if any, of those in the future. But the haptic feedback on the DualSense controller is actually really cool in games that take good advantage of it. But it's been really annoying that it's only supporting a wired connection on PC. Now, there's still not any official update to add that from Sony, and I really doubt we'll be getting it now that Sony seems to be pulling back from their, game support on PC. However, the DSX PC App beta has added haptic support over Bluetooth as well as Bluetooth audio. It seems like the program just tricks it into thinking it's connected in a wired format, and then it can actually do that. At least that's my general understanding of how it works. I haven't tried this out yet, but I'm actually going to do so because I do use my DualSense controller on some PlayStation stuff, but oftentimes that's when I'm sitting on my couch playing on my TV situation. But the PC is a lot more powerful than the PS5, so it'd be nice to actually play the PC version of the game. But anyway. So that's a good update I might have to take a look at. Now, this isn't a paid app, so that does cost money, but I think it wasn't too crazy, so like $10-ish. Now, speaking of Steam, though, so the Steam hardware survey for May was published, and there's some really interesting stuff. I mean, some that are less interesting, but like on CPU side of things, AMD is just continuing to take market share from Intel. Projected to probably be less than a year now if you continue that trend line to take the majority for Steam users, which is certainly interesting. But another interesting thing is AMD's share and how they've been tracked. So there's been an ongoing controversy about the Steam hardware survey ever since AMD's 9000 series GPUs launched, because a lot of store data and things like that show that the 9070 XT sold pretty well. Still not as well as most Nvidia GPUs, but like sold pretty well. So people were surprised that it just wasn't showing up on the Steam hardware survey. But there was a lot of AMD, how did they list it here? AMD Radeon TM graphics being listed. And there were a lot of users who got the Steam hardware survey saying, I have like a 9070 XT, but when I get the Steam hardware survey, it's reporting the AMD Radeon TM graphics, which is like the integrated GPU on my CPU, instead of my 9070 XT. Well, it actually looks like not only is that maybe somewhat confirmed that that's what was happening, but that's possibly been fixed. Because from last month to this month, the AMD Radeon TM graphics segment dropped 1.47%. Now that's not like it compared to previously by changing by only 1%, but like of total Steam hardware like market share. That's huge. That would represent millions of users. And so it's very unusual to see that kind of drop happen in a single month. That would be very strange for that to happen unless something was changing behind the scenes on how data was tracked this month. Also, when we see the 1.47% drop there, I just realized that that's cut off from your guys' screen. Let me like resize my window here. Sorry about that. Anyway, 1.47%. There we go. So that drops. Now, if you scroll up, notice that the 9070 XT has gone from literally just not showing up to being at 1.33% of the overall Steam hardware survey. That, again, is a huge jump. And it's not like this is a GPU that just suddenly went on the market and we're only seeing it show up this month, but it's been out there forever. I'm sure they sold a few in the last month, but not enough to go from just not even registering to jumping this much. So this certainly seems to be confirmation that many 9070 XTs were being improperly reported as Radeon TM graphics. And now this seems a lot more plausible. So now notice that the 9070 XT, for example, is not that far behind the market share of like an RTX 5080. Now, certainly it's still down here on the list. Like, you got to go quite a ways down to get it. It's not like I'm saying that this is in any means showing AMD actually has some huge percentage of the Steam hardware survey. But it is showing that, it did have a larger share than was being previously reported, and people seem to have been correct about that issue. Also, a lot of people, myself included, have also looked at John Petty Research, who does quarterly numbers for market share and GPU shipments and all of that. And one thing that's interesting to note in their most recent ones is that they've also corrected an issue from a previous report. So they're now showing 8% for AMD in quarter 125, quarter 425, and quarter 126. Intel holding at 1% and Nvidia at 91%, and then dropping actually to 90% here. These are rounded to whole numbers, so you don't always get it to add up to 100% there. But yeah, so we had previously seen AMD drop to, I think they had them at like 4 or 5%, but they actually adjusted, they found an error in their tracking, and they have corrected for that in a previous report that was already published. So I'm not trying to say that AMD is dominating the GPU space. It's still 8%. But I am saying that some of the concerns that people had, reporting on data like this, and again, I did report on the John Petty research, so I think it's important to tell you that update. This has been corrected, and so AMD is not showing the like massive decline that they had showed in that previous report. It's now showing just steadily holding at 8%, which is still very small, but it's at least steadily holding there rather than a big drop. And again, the 9070 XT is now showing up more where you would expect, selling similar numbers, but a bit fewer to something like a 5080. It's now just barely behind a 3080, that kind of stuff. So there you go. The most popular GPU on Steam is still the RTX 3060. Some people still ask, why do I bother benchmarking that when I benchmark new games that come out? Guys, it's still the most popular GPU on there, okay? So I think it makes a lot of sense that a lot of people have this kind of class of GPU. All right, that's what I've got for you guys today. Don't forget to check out PlayTracker. It is totally free, pretty cool. That's a sponsored link in the video description and or pinned comment. And I hope all of you have an excellent day.